Hello, I'm Joe Eames, and welcome to Pluralsight's course on building Angular and Node applications with the Mean Stack. In the last few years, the face of web development has undergone some significant changes. New technologies have appeared that have added some radically different choices for building web applications. The three major pieces involved in a web app, the client, the server, and the database, have each seen widespread changes in what is available. When web applications first became popular, clients were simply a combination of HTML and CSS. Use of JavaScript was negligible. Over the past 15 years, that trend has slowly and consistently changed, such that more and more client-side code is included in web applications. At first, JavaScript was used strictly for validation. Then, more and more sites started using it to enhance the display in a method referred to as dynamic HTML, or just DHTML. Slowly, a technology invented by Microsoft and adopted by the other browser manufacturers called the XML HTTP Request Object, or XHR for short, began to be used to get information from the server without requesting an entirely new page. As all these capabilities got more and more traction, a series of libraries were developed by various people that grouped up functionality and managed differences in browser implementation, drastically lowering the bar for developers to take advantage of these browser abilities. There were several pioneers in this effort, such as YUI and Prototype, although jQuery is hands down the most popular of these libraries, and to this day remains the most popular JavaScript library in use. Then, just a few years ago, the development community took the next step and began treating client-side code as a serious platform, and MVC frameworks and libraries began to appear. That is where Angular comes in. Of all the MVC frameworks developed, Angular has taken the stage by storm, becoming, if not the most used, at least the most talked about and most popular of the MVC frameworks, and at its current pace will quickly become the most implemented of these frameworks. Being sponsored by Google while still being open source is also a big contributing factor to this popularity. Its implementation ideas are quite a departure from most other frameworks. This results in a drastically different way of building client-side applications with a significant reduction in code, as much as 80% less code compared to doing the same thing with jQuery by itself or some of the older MVC frameworks. As big as the changes to the client have been, it's likely that the changes to the server in the last few years have been even bigger. If not bigger, then they have definitely been more surprising. It's probable that in 2008, if you had said that JavaScript would become one of the hottest languages for server development within 5 years, that people would have laughed in your face. Yet, here we are living in a world where Node is gaining market share at a rapid pace and is now making significant inroads in the enterprise. Major companies are announcing shifts to Node as a key component of their web development. One of the reasons that Node is making such a splash is the Express.js middleware. Express provides a framework on Node to easily develop websites. For many developers, Express and Node are practically attached at the hip. Perhaps the tier where the most significant change has been made is the data storage tier. In the early years of the web, relational databases ruled the landscape. But high scalability sites such as Amazon require performance that just isn't available in the limitations of relational databases. This caused a new type of database to appear, commonly referred to as NoSQL. As this need for performance brought these new options for data storage to the table, developers also saw other advantages in these alternatives. Document databases are a kind of NoSQL database which can easily represent typical data used in web applications without the constraints and overhead of relational databases and referential integrity. Many developers quickly grew to appreciate the versatility of this type of database. Of the products out there for document databases, MongoDB is definitely one of the most popular. It stores its data in a format called BSON, which is just a binary representation of JSON. MongoDB also uses JavaScript as its native query language. This parity made it a natural choice for Node developers. With these inventions, suddenly it became possible to build an entire web application using only JavaScript across all the tiers. No longer would a web developer need to context switch when moving from one tier to the next. This certainly isn't a kind of silver bullet which makes development suddenly simple. Each tier still requires significantly different coding paradigms, but now at least the language can be the same. This harmony is likely one of the reasons that Mean became a popular choice for building web applications. That and the fact that it made a pretty cool acronym, even if it is a little bit out of order. Let's take a brief look at the agenda for this module. First, we'll have this introduction. After that, we will talk about the prerequisites that you will need in order to get the most from this course. Then we'll talk about the operating systems used and how using a different operating system may affect you. After that, we'll talk about the application that we'll be building in this course. Then we'll talk briefly about the different versions of each of the major technologies used. And finally, I'll discuss the demo files that you will have access to depending on your type of Pluralsight subscription. In this course, we are going to learn how to build an application with the mean stack. To achieve that goal, we will build a realistic application end-to-end, starting from absolutely nothing, just an empty folder, and develop it line by line, while introducing the core concepts of putting these 4 fantastic technologies together and highlighting the harmony that comes from using them. That application will be built up throughout this entire course, so let's look at the agenda for the course and see which pieces of the application will be built when. We start with this introductory module. Then Module 2 will be where we create our walking skeleton, which is just a tiny bit of the application, but it will be every layer from the client all the way through to the database. Next, we'll get right to business by getting our application out on the web. We'll learn how to deploy it to Heroku, a popular and free hosting service. Then we'll go back to the code and lay the groundwork for our user interface. The next step will be to implement authentication and authorization for our application. We'll use the Passport module for this, which is one of the more popular Node modules for authentication. After that, we will set up tests for our client-side code. We won't do a bunch of testing, but we will get it set up. After that, we'll create entities using a RESTful interface by implementing our sign-up page to create new users. In the next module, we'll implement the user profile page, which will teach us all about updating data with the mean stack. The next module will be a list page, which we will use to learn about sorting, filtering, and caching data. And in our last module, we'll implement a details page, which will teach us about selecting and caching single entities. At this point, we will have a complete application that will have all the pieces of a real application and could easily be used as a starting point for any kind of application with relatively few changes.